Scene script. Have you ever wondered what truly ignited the flames of the American Civil War? Let's turn back the hands of time to America's antebellum period, a time of profound change and escalating tensions. The United States, in her youth, was a patchwork quilt of differing economic realities. The North, with its burgeoning industries, was a stark contrast to the South, where an agrarian lifestyle, heavily reliant on slave labor, prevailed. This economic disparity laid the groundwork for what was to become one of the darkest chapters in American history. Slavery, a contentious issue that had long been a thorn in the nation's side, was the fuel that fed the growing fire of discord. The South, with its cotton fields and plantations, saw slavery as a necessary evil, an integral part of their economy and way of life. The North, on the other hand, was steadily moving towards industrialization, and viewed slavery as an inhumane and outdated practice. This fundamental disagreement over the issue of human bondage was a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. The political landscape was equally volatile. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which allowed territories to decide whether they would allow slavery, ignited a firestorm of controversy. The Dred Scott decision of 1857, where the Supreme Court ruled that Congress could not regulate slavery in the territories, further fanned the flames of division. These landmark events, like kindling on a fire, only served to stoke the embers of animosity between the North and South. As the decade rolled on, the hostilities worsened. The nation, once united in its infancy, was now a house divided against itself. The South, feeling marginalized and threatened, began to entertain thoughts of secession. The North, believing in the sanctity of the Union, was prepared to fight to preserve it. The stage was set, the players were ready, and the spark that would ignite the war was about to be lit. The firing on Fort Sumter, the spark that ignited the deadliest war in American history. The year was 1861. The United States, a young nation, was on the brink of a cataclysmic division. The Southern states, driven by their economic reliance on slavery and a deep-seated belief in states' rights, made a fateful decision. One by one, they began to secede from the Union, forming a new entity, the Confederate States of America. From South Carolina to Texas, these 11 states declared their independence, echoing the revolutionary spirit of their forefathers a mere 85 years prior. Yet this was not a unanimous decision. Many Southerners, especially those in the border states, remained loyal to the Union, sowing seeds of conflict that would rip families and communities apart. In the midst of this burgeoning crisis, a military installation off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina, became the flashpoint of tension. Fort Sumter, a Union stronghold in the heart of the Confederacy, was a symbolic and strategic prize. Its control was hotly contested, and on April 12th, the Confederates, under the command of General P.G.T. Beauregard, opened fire. After a 34-hour bombardment, the Union garrison surrendered. The first shots of the Civil War had been fired. News of the attack on Fort Sumter sent shockwaves through the nation. President Abraham Lincoln, recognizing the gravity of the situation, issued a call to arms. He requested 75,000 volunteers to quell the rebellion, a call that was met with both fervent enthusiasm and vehement opposition, further deepening the divide between North and South. As the Union and Confederate armies began to mobilize, the reality of the situation became starkly apparent. This was not a minor rebellion, nor a brief skirmish. It was a full-scale war, one that would test the mettle of the American people and the principles upon which their nation was built. Battle lines were drawn, the North and South were at war. In every war, there are moments that change the course of history. The American Civil War, a 4-year struggle that shattered a nation, was no exception. As the war unfolded, several key battles and strategic maneuvers shifted the balance of power and altered the trajectory of the conflict. The first of these turning points came in September of 1862, during the Battle of Antietam. The bloodiest single-day battle in American history, Antietam saw the Union Army stave off an invasion by Confederate forces in Maryland. This victory, albeit a costly one, provided President Abraham Lincoln with the opportunity to issue the Emancipation Proclamation, a historic document that declared all slaves in Confederate-held territory to be free. This proclamation didn't immediately end slavery, but it changed the fundamental character of the war. The fight was no longer just about preserving the Union, but also about human freedom. The Emancipation Proclamation also made foreign intervention on behalf of the Confederacy less likely, as many European powers had abolished slavery and wouldn't support a pro-slavery state. The following year, in July of 1863, the Union scored another decisive victory at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The Battle of Gettysburg, often described as the war's turning point, was the deadliest of the entire conflict. It halted Confederate General Robert E. Lee's second invasion of the North, and it marked the first major defeat for the South. The Union's victory at Gettysburg was a significant morale boost for the North, and a crushing blow for the South, which never fully recovered from the loss. Simultaneously, halfway across the country, another turning point was unfolding. In the western theater of the war, Union forces laid siege to Vicksburg, Mississippi, a strategic Confederate stronghold on the Mississippi River. After a grueling 47-day siege, Confederate forces surrendered on July 4, 1863, the day after the Union's victory at Gettysburg. The fall of Vicksburg effectively split the Confederacy in half, giving the Union control of the Mississippi River and severing vital supply lines for the South. These battles were more than just military victories for the Union. They were symbolic triumphs that redefined the war and the nation's future. The Battle of Antietam paved the way for the Emancipation Proclamation, transforming the war into a fight for freedom. The Battle of Gettysburg marked a turning point in the Confederacy's fortunes, while the Siege of Vicksburg divided the southern states and crippled their ability to wage war. The tide of the war was turning, but the end was not yet in sight. Desperation, determination, and the final push for victory. This was the backdrop to the final years of the American Civil War. A time when the nation was on its knees, yet the spirit of resistance remained unbroken. In the autumn of 1864, General William T. Sherman embarked on a military campaign that would become known as Sherman's March to the Sea. With 60,000 troops under his command, Sherman cut a swath of destruction through Georgia, aiming to break the Confederacy's will to fight. His soldiers burned farms, destroyed railroads, and left a path of devastation in their wake. It was a brutal strategy, but it was effective. By December, Sherman had captured Savannah and had effectively split the Confederacy in two. Meanwhile, to the north, the siege of Petersburg was entering its final stages. For nearly 10 months, Union forces had laid siege to this vital Confederate supply center. The strain was beginning to show as Confederate soldiers, starved and outnumbered, held on in the face of relentless Union assaults. The siege ended in April of 1865 with a decisive Union victory. The Confederates were forced to abandon Petersburg, leaving Richmond, the Confederate capital, exposed. Within a week, Union forces had captured Richmond, effectively signaling the end of the Confederacy. Yet, the war did not officially end until the surrender of General Robert E. Lee at Appomattox Courthouse. On April 9th, Lee met with Union General Ulysses S. Grant to negotiate the terms of surrender. It was a somber occasion, marking the end of a long and bloody conflict that had torn the nation apart. The toll of the war was immense. An estimated 600,000 soldiers had lost their lives, and countless others were wounded or displaced. The South was in ruins, its economy devastated by the war and the abolition of slavery. Yet, amidst the destruction, there was a glimmer of hope. The Union had been preserved, and the institution of slavery had been forever abolished. The final years of the American Civil War were marked by desperation and determination. Desperation on the part of the Confederacy as they made their last stand against the overwhelming might of the Union. Determination on the part of the Union as they pushed for the final victory that would preserve the nation and end the institution of slavery. Yet even as the nation celebrated the end of the war, there was an understanding that the struggle was far from over. The South would need to be rebuilt, and the nation would need to heal from the wounds of war. Moreover, the promises of freedom and equality for the formerly enslaved African Americans were yet to be fulfilled. The war was over, but the struggle for a united nation was just beginning. A nation divided, a nation rebuilding. As the smoke of the Civil War cleared, America was left to grapple with a landscape irreversibly altered. The aftermath of the war was a time of profound change, marked by grand triumphs, bitter disappointments, and enduring legacies. The assassination of President Abraham Lincoln, just 5 days after the Union's victory, sent shockwaves throughout the nation. A beacon of hope extinguished, leaving the country to navigate the treacherous waters of Reconstruction without its guiding light. Andrew Johnson, Lincoln's successor, faced the daunting task of reuniting a fractured nation and healing the deep wounds left by a brutal and bloody conflict. The Reconstruction era was a period of struggle and strife, but also one of significant progress. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution, often referred to as the Reconstruction Amendments, were landmark pieces of legislation that fundamentally reshaped the nation's social and political fabric. The 13th Amendment, ratified in December of 1865, abolished slavery throughout the United States. This amendment was a monumental stride towards racial equality, a formal end to the inhumane institution that had been a contentious point of division for decades. The 14th Amendment, ratified in July of 1868, granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including former slaves. It promised equal protection under the law, aiming to safeguard the rights of the newly freed African Americans against discriminatory state laws. The 15th Amendment, ratified in February of 1870, prohibited the denial of the right to vote based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. This amendment marked a significant step towards universal suffrage, though it would be many more years before this promise would be fully realized for all citizens. Yet, despite these significant strides, the aftermath of the Civil War was not without its challenges. The South, ravaged by war, struggled to rebuild its economy and society. The promise of equality was often undermined by the rise of discriminatory practices and violent backlash. The legacy of the war, both the triumphs and the trials, continues to echo throughout American society, shaping our understanding of freedom, equality, and justice. The American Civil War and its aftermath were defining periods in American history. They forced the nation to confront the deep-seated divisions and contradictions within its own identity, to grapple with the legacy of slavery, and to redefine the meaning of freedom and citizenship. The American Civil War, a defining period in our history, forever changed the fabric of our nation. The war and its aftermath left an indelible mark on the American psyche, shaping the nation's trajectory and continuing to influence our collective memory and national conversation. The echoes of the American Civil War still reverberate today. As we look back on the tumultuous era of the American Civil War, we see a nation grappling with its identity, torn apart by the contentious issue of slavery and the challenge of defining its democratic principles. This was a period that tested the resilience of the United States, a crucible of fire that shaped the nation into what it is today. The Civil War was not just about battles fought and lives lost, although these were significant. It was a clash of ideologies, a struggle for human rights, and a defining moment in the journey towards a more perfect union. The end of the war marked the abolition of slavery, a monumental step towards equality and justice. Yet, the aftermath of the war was far from smooth. The Reconstruction era was a time of great change and conflict, of healing and rebuilding, of transformation and growth. The struggle for civil rights continued, the echoes of which can still be heard today. The legacy of the Civil War is etched deeply into the fabric of American society. It has shaped the discourse on race and equality, influenced the political landscape, and echoes in the ongoing debates about states' rights and federal power. We can see its imprint in the monuments and memorials that dot our country, in the pages of our history books, and in the stories we tell. It serves as a stark reminder of the cost of division, the price of freedom, and the enduring power of unity. Challenge yourself to delve deeper into this critical period in American history. Go beyond the battles and generals, beyond the political rhetoric and the speeches. Understand the human stories, the struggles and triumphs, the lessons learned and the wisdom gained. The American Civil War, a testament to the resilience and evolution of a nation, a story of division, struggle, and ultimately unity.